Thanks for waiting, everyone. We know it's been a couple of months, but we're glad to be back. This is the Believe in Bricks podcast, and we are back.
Same old Browns, boys! Just the same old Browns!
Garrett's going to get him, and he knocks the ball away. Caught by Donovan Peoples-Jones! Touchdown! He got it! He got Chubb! He's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown! Wow, what a struggle. The way it should be, I guess.
Brownies, here we go! Woo, woo. Here we go, Brownies!
And yes, we are indeed back, everyone. Thank you for being patient over the summer. We've been equally as impatient to get things going with all things Cleveland Browns. Training camp is here. They've just finished up at the Green Brier, actually, before heading over to Canton for the Hall of Fame game next week. Alongside me, Josh Emmett, as usual, is Shaun Blundell and Owain Jones. Gents, it's nice to be back, isn't it? Shaun, how have you been, mate?
Yeah, good to be back, mate. It's been a strange off-season, really. It seems to have flown by in some aspects and then dragged in others. I think the last few weeks without any British footballers probably made it feel like it's dragged a little bit longer. But no, good to be back, mate. Quiet on the Browns front, which we'll probably talk about, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So, yeah, good to get back, mate, and start building a pipe for the new campaign.
Absolutely. Owain, obviously, you'd usually be have your calendar filled with your British football, European football, activities. Obviously, you've not had that. You've not had the Browns. How have you been keeping going for the last several weeks and months?
Yeah, not too bad. The off season's been a bit different to what we had last year, which has been quite refreshing. To be fair, I think it was quite taxing last season, but yeah, my own pre-season over the last month has been quite difficult, so that's been keeping me busy. But yeah, looking forward to the start of the American football season and the start of my season as well. So less running and more games now. So.
Yeah, stupidly enough, actually, speaking of your pre-season, I was actually watching some Welsh football over the last few weeks. Haverfordwest been keeping on top of their Conference League campaign with their penalty kicks win over, I can't remember, it was some North Macedonian team of whom the name completely escapes me, but being a Villa fan, obviously, I've had one eye on that kind of thing, and also I've had Shaun will tell you this as well. Sort of been keeping American hours for the last several days, as they've been in the States as well. So a couple of midnight games, a casual hour and a half delay in Orlando due to thunderstorms. It feels like I've been back in NFL times. It feels like November and the Dolphins having to relocate and all sorts, but anyway, we'll save some of that for Barking Mad, shall we? So yeah, in terms of how this was going to go, folks, we're going to touch on some Browns news first of all, but in keeping with my request for how the off-season should go, which is that we have a relatively serene Brown training camp and off-season, there's not really much news to report. This is brilliant. Like you both said, it's somewhat weird that we are not the off-season darlings and constantly wheeling and dealing and doing this, that, and the other. The only thing of which has made it slightly more, slightly more off course is Perry and Winfrey. Obviously was cut from the team on day one of training camp, of which made me think, God, here we go. Training camp going to be derailed right from the very start. But we've not really heard much from anyone else since. When you spoke, I think, throughout last season about Perry and Winfrey being someone to sort of look out for this sort of thing. Obviously, he's gone now. Is this just something of which always seemed on the cards with him, really?
Yeah, not really all that surprised. I thought, like, immediately when he joined the team and after the draft, and we heard all of this, lip service and all the rah bullshit, as I would call it, from him. It always seemed to me like that it was going to head towards a short but loud stint with the Browns. I thought that Mac Wilson, although he never got into trouble, was similar in the sense that he was always louder than what you would see on the field. And I thought that's always what we were going to get from Perry Wilfrey. It's a shame in a way, because it was a position that we obviously still need help in, and he did show flashes as a rookie of having some potential. So it's a shame that it's gone this way. But yeah, I hope the woman involved in that incident's okay. And I hope he gets the help that he needs, because obviously he needs a bunch of it at this point, and seems like a long road back to the NFL for him. I personally probably can't see a way back, because he hasn't shown enough to get a second chance. So yeah, fingers crossed he sort of gets a kick up the arse from this, because he clearly needs one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that goes without saying. Shaun, I see your head sort of bobbing along. It's very much a case of his head's just not screwed on straight. And that's been noticeable for not just right now, but for several months.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was one of those selections when it was made. It made a lot of noise because he had quite a good sort of reaction video, if you like, to getting the call, and people seemed to attach themselves to that. But as Owain said, it was all a lot of bravado. His play on the field, although yes, it did improve towards the back end of last season, he was probably going to be in a training camp battle this off season anyway. If we're being honest, it's certainly a position that has needed an overhaul. It's been a position that they've obviously tried some sort of mid to late round picks at in recent times. Obviously went with Dalvin Tomlinson as a sort of marquee free agent signing this year to try and shore it up. But I still believe that will be a position that once roster cuts are made, or once training camp has sort of come and gone, and some of the veterans that, let's put it this way, probably don't want to necessarily participate in training camp at the back end of the careers, might be a little bit more interested. You know, they just need a big, ugly run stuffer, which is what we've said for a while. The splash players come elsewhere on the defense. You want somebody just to take up two people so that Myles Garrett's got more one-on-ones, that type of thing. So I don't expect it to be a flashy sort of, marquee, sexy pick or anything like that, or name that they sort of bring in. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Perrion Winfrey, I think, as Owain said, it's a shame really, because he's a young kid whose career's probably been and gone already. But he won't be the first, unfortunately. He won't be the last. The problem with the NFL offseason being as long as it is, particularly for these rookies that have all of a sudden got the world in front of them and a lot of money and a lot of, sort of interest in them. I think the NFL really needs to look at how they actually support these young people through their first couple of years in the league in particular. It must be a hell of a transition for them, taken away from home, from family, dumped somewhere that they get no say in the matter, if you like. I'm sure most people's first choice wouldn't be moving to Cleveland, let's be honest. As much as we love the Browns, it's hardly going to be high on most rookies' wanted list. They're going to want the sunshine. They're going to want somewhere, a little bit more luxurious to play. But, just in general terms, he won't, like I say, won't be the only rookie that's ever been in trouble. Hopefully he can turn his life around, and like you say, the Browns rightfully do move on. Obviously we've had more than enough in the last couple of off seasons with stuff off the field. So certainly the first sign of anything else was something that we didn't want to be, doing anything other than taking a bit of a firm stance with.
Yeah, and it's that last bit as well. Obviously this was a bigger test than usual for the Browns, I think, because of obviously the whole Deshaun Watson of it all. They could have been not more lenient. That's probably the wrong word to take, but they could have gone short of expelling him from the team, et cetera, et cetera. But they were very hard line. It was a case of, nope, the facts are there, you're gone. There's no gray to it. It's all black and white. So, it is interesting from that point of view as well. But no, I agree with both of you there. And in terms of, moves going forward as well, I don't think that we'll see anything of which is a really sexy move at this point. I don't think you get sexy moves, from July, August. It's all about just tooling up to be the best you can be. When you see holes that come through in the preseason games, obviously we'll see as to how that shapes up over the course of the next several weeks, with the first one against the Jets on Thursday night. But yeah, it's just been a nice, serene training camp, really, apart from that one blip and the 2 fights today. But don't talk about that either, because I found out about that about 20 seconds before we went live, and I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Yeah, there we go. So the news is that there's no news. Realistically, in fact, no, I'll ask you guys this: whether it's Brown's training camp or training camp in general from elsewhere, can you give me one thing of which you can take one takeaway from what you've seen currently? It can be the super obvious stuff or the not so obvious stuff. Open it to
I'll go one of each. So around the NFL, obviously we've seen a few big injuries so far to important players, which
Mhm.
you never want to see at this point in the season. Obviously looking at our own roster, we had one, in Grant Delpit's rookie season where he was out for the whole season, and we were relying on him to be somewhat decent that year as a rookie. So you never want to see these sort of injuries. Obviously, hoping, fingers crossed, that we get through camp, the rest of camp with all our star players or all of our players in general still healthy. So that's my take from around the league. As far as the Browns go, it's nice to see Elijah Moore getting a lot of love from Browns Twitter and everyone that seems to be watching camp, singling him out. Player that I loved coming out of college. Obviously wanted him to do well with the Jets, but obviously didn't work out. Loved the trade that they made to get him, so can't wait to see him actually in season for the Browns. And it's nice that he's made a good impression to start.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the video guys always do a great job down there. I know it's not building the Browns anymore. It's unleashed, isn't it? Apparently, we're ready now. We don't need to be built anymore. But there was an episode, wasn't there, that was pretty focused heavily on Elijah Moore. And as you say, he certainly came across as quite a humble guy. Obviously, somebody that looks to improve day in and day out. I mean, his physique, to be fair, it was mightily impressive. So, like you say, he's a guy that obviously hopes to bring a lot to the offense. I think we were crying out, weren't we, for some additional help in that position. I don't think you could rely necessarily on DPJ and Amari Cooper as realistically the only two threats in that room. I think obviously you've got a legitimate third threat there now, and obviously we'll see what the rookies do in terms of Tillman, etc. So yeah, definitely agree in terms of Elijah Moore for the Browns. I think the thing from around the league is like you say, I think the injuries, it's always one of those things, isn't it, that you just forget just how significant and how short the NFL season is. Because take the Joe Burrow one, which is going to be the one that's going to have the biggest impact on the Browns. Joe Burrow could miss several weeks. Now, several weeks might end up being 4 or 5 weeks, and he might be back in the first couple of weeks of the season. If he misses 8 or 9 weeks, this AFC North is going to be pretty competitive, you would imagine. Let's put the Browns in the conversation. Should be, I would suggest, from the talent on the roster. Obviously, heavily dependent on whether or not the quarterback position works out the way that the front office hoped it did when they made the trade. But you're certainly going to have 3 teams that have got ambitions of winning. And when I always say this, never rule out the Steelers with Mike Tomlin, because they'll be disciplined, they'll be organised, they'll be ugly. So this is going to be a really difficult division to win. You take Joe Burrow out of that Bengals side for 5 or 6 weeks. If they start 2-4, or even 3-3, it's a tricky road to navigate through the division from a difficult beginning. Obviously, it massively improves the Browns' chances week 1. You never want to see an opponent injured, and I'd much rather beat the Bengals with Joe Burrow at centre. I'm certainly not taking the easy route out, but take the emotion aside, it certainly gives the Browns a much better chance on week 1. And I think the other thing I would just say on Joe Burrow as a unrelated point is the contract that was handed out to Justin Herbert. Probably, I would say, justified. I think somebody posted in our WhatsApp chat, how's he managed to get paid that much? I don't think Justin Herbert's the reason that the Chargers haven't won playoff games. I think, if anything, we've all felt as though Justin Herbert's been held back, certainly since his rookie season. He seems to have almost had a little bit of a handbrake applied to him for whatever reason. But he will certainly be very, very good for a very, very long period of time. And he's got the durability factor that we've seen. This is now another significant injury for Joe Burrow. And there's no doubt he's fantastically talented, but any player's greatest ability, first and foremost, is their availability. And you just wonder whether the Bengals start to get a little bit twitchy with the amount of guaranteed money being floated around, just to pay the guy, to get the guy. They all want to go to be the next one to get paid, don't they? So Justin Herbert's reset the market now effectively. Deshaun Watson's the big anomaly in all of this, but Justin Herbert's effectively reset the market. That's Joe Burrow's starting point now, isn't it? Are the Bengals really want to part with all of that? It's a big decision for them, isn't it? So we'll wait and see what happens there.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one as well with that. And it's good that you've mentioned the contract because I think I heard something when the injury first happened that the agent had said something along the lines of, he might not actually train until a contract is agreed upon, at this point. Because let's say he's out for 4 weeks. That takes you pretty much to the last preseason game. Realistically, if you're on your last year for it, you want that done. Really, you don't want to get into this Lamar Jackson-esque issue. But then when you talk about availability and being injury prone and all the rest of it, Lamar Jackson's just been given a humongous bag when he's only been available for about 55% of the last 2 seasons. So, there then becomes a case of, the Bengals are twitchier than most when it comes to this sort of thing, right? It's usually the joke that's thrown at them. But, when it comes to, paying out, I think they want to pay Joe Burrow this much because they can see that it's really going to start churning. They can see a brand shift and they can start seeing the money rolling in off the back of it as well, which is, great for them, obviously, and they want to be able to keep this train going. There's been positive conversations about, being able to potentially take less or route it in a different way so they can keep guys on board, etc., etc. But if there is twitchiness, they almost have to look towards Baltimore at this point and go, well, if not Justin Herbert money, Lamar's just been given that huge bag, and it's still a huge bag. So, at some point you sort of bite the bullet. But in terms of, obviously, the Browns of it all in the AFC North, etc., what's interesting is the Bengals' first 2 games. You got the Browns and then you got the Ravens. If Trevor Simeon's going under center for those 2 games, that's a very difficult start for Cincinnati. You could argue that they then have a nice little buffer to get themselves back up, at least on paper. They've got the Rams, they've got the Titans, they've got the Cardinals, I think it is, for their next 3. But it's the start that's going to be the trouble. But Cincinnati, again, were one of those teams last season that even after a bump in the road straight away to the Steelers, were able to pick themselves back up and get themselves moving. So very interesting, I think, that one from a number of different sides. And it's I don't think it's something that's going to go away just yet. They've not given a prognosis yet, have they, in terms of like weeks expected or anything like that? No, I'm seeing a shake of heads. So it's going to be interesting. What's that, sorry?
Just several weeks.
Several weeks.
Very vague. Very deliberately so.
Yeah, it sounds like they've had tests back then and they're just not going to panic people by the sounds of it. Probably just to allow the Browns to not game plan for whatever either, because obviously that would be... Well, it's a factor, isn't it? If you... let's say we're into week 4 of this and the Browns start having to start writing their game plan up. If you don't have to designate someone as not playing until the very last minute, you're going to cause that headache. So, mind games galore. It's the NFL. Right. So, and my takes as well. So, I found around the league, I've found this weird sort of like back and forth between teams. Very interesting. This whole Sean Payton versus Aaron Rodgers thing over the last 2 days has been very funny because the Jets and the Broncos, give me a break. How is that becoming something that's new? That's almost like they're beefing up this week. I think it's a week 4 game that they've got against each other to be way more than it is. And also, Sean Payton and Aaron, is there history there or something? But in any case, it's such a nonsense. And then you got the fact that the Jets seem to be the overhyped team this year, and they're sort of playing into that. The fact that they apparently didn't want to be on Hard Knocks and all the rest of it as well. I just found a lot of franchise pettiness. Is that the right way of putting it? There just seems to be a fair bit of it this year, and it's low-key brilliant. I quite like it. I think in this modern world where you're just looking for ways to be different, a bit of franchise pettiness is pretty cool. So you got that. And from a Browns perspective, number one, I've enjoyed the fact that all the musings from camp is we've never had this level of like throwing ability, in camp. Don't want to touch upon it too much, obviously, but it seems to be that that's the way in which it's looking. The fact that we've not had that before, which is good, but yet the Brown social media team seem to find the videos of which perfectly displays to how Deshaun Watson is no different from week 13 last season, where he's just throwing it to defenders under the slightest bit of pressure. So there's, who do I believe here? Deshaun Watson's got a really good relationship going with Njoku as well. So touching on yours, Owain, about Elijah Moore and him getting his props, I feel like Njoku's going to have a really big season this year. They seem to have developed a really good relationship just off what I've seen from videos in camp, etc., of which is great. And also, everyone's writing us off. At last, we're not the darlings of the offseason anymore. We're not the darlings of the NFL. For that has been for many different reasons from last year onwards. But now we're a team that people expect to come to and get a result out of. But then you look at like PFF and Madden and all the rest of it, and they're still putting us as like the 7th or 8th best team on paper. So, there's cause for optimism without going crazy, of which is the sweet spot, I find.
I think when you're touching on PFF and Madden, I think the reasons why those two in particular are higher on the Browns than the rest is because they don't necessarily have to play to an audience with all of the TV programs and stuff like that you're talking about aren't high on the Browns. They have a certain amount of play into an audience that they have to do to keep their ratings high, whereas PFF don't care about that. They care about tangible stuff that their statistics, their grades. They don't have to sell the fact that Deshaun Watson is who he is or whatever he's done to anyone because they've got stuff to back up what they say. Madden, similar type of thing. They all grade their players individually. Whoever's got the highest rating is going to be a highly rated team. So that's why those two in specific are higher on the Browns than everyone else. And like you said, I think it's a nice place to be because there doesn't seem to be an external pressure on them this year. Where there has been, a big one over the last, 3 or 4 years. So, yeah, it'll be a nice change to see them going into the season as underdogs, and hopefully we see a different outcome to what we've been accustomed to.
Yeah, so I'm now just gunning for Conspiracy Corner to be one of our segs now, and just a hit, almost like a Great British News sort of like takedown of the mainstream NFL media and how they are constantly bashing on the Browns. I reckon we could get a good 10 minutes of show on that. But no, I think you're right. The stats speak for themselves. We've got a very good roster. But the problem being is that we've said that for years, and it's a case of we've got to actually make it happen now, because otherwise it's all for naught. And I'm sick of being optimistic and then getting almost laughed at because of just how poor we are when we actually put it onto the field. So, but no, cause for optimism, folks. Cause for optimism. And on that note, let's move on now away from training camp in general and look towards our expectations for the year. We'll do our season's predictor episode later on. We'll do that when we get right close to week 1, just so we can see whether or not Joe Burrow is definitely injured for a bit, as that might change a few different predictions. But yeah, we'll save that fun for later. Instead, I'm going to ask you first what you think would be a success. What would be deemed as a success for the Cleveland Browns right now? What would you take at the end of this year as a success?
This is a tough question to answer for me, because my philosophy on the NFL is always make the playoffs, and then it's a little bit of a crapshoot after that. So my gut feeling would be to say make the playoffs. That's what they should be doing and aiming for every year after the trade that they made last season. Make the playoffs, see what happens from there. Realistically, with the roster they have, they need to be winning at least one playoff game probably to make all of the decisions they've made worthwhile. But again, going back to my philosophy on the NFL, I would say just to make the playoffs, and then, who knows what can happen from there.
Cool. Shaun?
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that, isn't it? I think the interesting thing is, as you said, there probably isn't a huge amount of external sort of expectation or pressure compared to previous years. But I think we're at the point probably now internally where that is going to start to come. If you look at Kevin Stefanski's reign, if you like, obviously started off incredibly impressively, obviously got that playoff win in terms of the Pittsburgh game. And then since then, through different reasons, obviously 2 seasons blighted by problems at the quarterback position for different reasons, in terms of Mayfield's injury and then Watson's suspension, etc., etc. I wouldn't say he's necessarily been given a bit of a free pass, but I think the expectation levels have been reduced accordingly based on the fact that we've effectively had 2 full seasons without first choice quarterback behind centre going into the start of the campaign. Obviously, there's still a lot that could happen between now and the season kicking off, but I think anything less than the playoffs, to be honest, I think you would find Kevin Stefanski on a very, very hot seat, come the end of the season. I think the expectation internally, that will be a bare minimum. And it is, as Owain said, you get to the point where you're going to have 12 or 14, however many make the playoffs these days, teams that are all going to be equally as competitive as each other, once you get to that stage. So it is obviously a very, very difficult league to consistently win in, but that should be the bare minimum in terms of, sort of a successful season. In my opinion, also, it would be at least making the playoffs.
You can tell that Shaun runs his own podcast because he leads me into what I'm going to ask next anyway, even if he doesn't realize it. So you're saying that Stefanski would be on a very hot seat if we don't make the playoffs. What would... Because obviously this is something which has been mentioned for a bit now. I initially put what would be a failure, but obviously by the sounds of it, and I'd probably agree, a failure would be not making the playoffs with this season. But what would be deemed as so much of a failure that Stefanski is asked to leave at the end of the season? What is seen as like, the bare minimum to get for him to start, for it to be not deemed as a complete failure? Is it not making the playoffs? Is it being 4th in the division? Is it, losing record? What's the bare minimum?
Yeah, I think anything under 500, I think you'd be in real trouble. Real trouble. Anything under 500. I think obviously the divisional standings can be a little bit subjective based on where everybody else ends up record-wise themselves. Obviously, obviously Tampa won their division with a losing record last year, so it's a little bit subjective in terms of where you actually finish in the division, I guess. But I would suggest anything under 500. I think he'll be in very, very choppy waters. Like I say, I think he's had 2 years of, like I say, he got a bit of credit in the bank from his opening year. I think the 3 of us are pretty universal in probably our opinion that he's the right person for the job. I think any 3 of us are actually advocating that, he shouldn't be here based on the last 2 years, far from it. But it's obviously time to deliver now. So I think anything under 500 he's going to be really, well, let's face it, we'll all be disappointed if we're under 500. I think, the fan base will be disappointed. And then once you've got the fan base, universally against you, you're then always swimming uphill, aren't you? So, like I say, 500 is anything less than that, I think he would definitely be gone.
Yeah. Would you be any harsher than that, Owain? Any more lenient, or is that kind of the line for you there?
No, I think if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, I think he's probably gone, barring something spectacular. So the two things that
barring
I would
like a QB injury or something like that.
That's what I was about to say. Like QB injury, or the other three teams in the division having special seasons, and the Browns still having a really good season, but just falling a little bit short. I think outside of those two scenarios happening, if the Browns don't make the playoffs, I think he's gone. And I think AB's probably in a lot of trouble then as well. I think, we've come accustomed to the Haslams and how knee-jerk they've been at times. To be fair to them, they've actually given these two like a relatively long leash. Like Shaun said really well there, like the three of us think Stefanski's the guy to take this forward. I think the three of us probably really have that opinion of AB as well, I would imagine. So I'm a little bit nervous about this season, to be honest, because I'm so wanting this to work, because I think the world of AB personally, and I think most of the decisions he's made has been spot on. But there is a lot of pressure on this season just because of how the last two have gone. So, yeah, nervous about this season going into it. Me.
I have to admit, I didn't expect that, and I like that from a case of maybe there's not that external pressure, but there might be internal pressure. We might be the only ones in a crowded room that sort of go, God, nervous about this game. It's like, what are you on about? You're not expected to do much. Like, no. Internally, we see the goal here. We should be divisional round or above, in our own mind. Realistically, if we weren't in the AFC North, we'd probably be a lot further ahead than we were in terms of our roadmap. We'd piss the AFC South every year, for example. I think anyone could piss the AFC South apart from the AFC South. But, it does feel like one of those, doesn't it, where there are higher expectations. Just looking at the Browns' strength of schedule, so it's 0.460 on last year. In terms of the percentage win-loss record, which is exactly 16th in terms of strength of schedule based on last year's win-loss, and also projected wins as well. So based on projected wins and the win-loss columns, they are exactly midway through, of which gives them as good a chance as any. Projected wins for the Browns is 9, which puts us at above 500. But as we said, there does seem to be a form of bias, if anything else. The line reads 9.5, which is probably about right. Around that sort of 10 mark is where you should be looking in order to get a wild card spot, especially in a division as tough as the AFC North. And that sort of tells you everything that you need to know. There's not really too much else to discuss really on an actual serious team front. So I tell you what, let's do a segment that people have been begging for me to actually put back in with a bit more regularity. Let's go to some barking mad showers. That's usually how the summer ends up going.
Here we go, Brownies! Here we go! Woo, woo. Here we go, Brownies! Here we go! Woo, woo.
That's right. I even gave it some music. Why not? We're going to do things right this season, folks. If you watch on the video versions, whether it's YouTube, Live, Spotify, etc., you can see us in a nice little branded way, and we're also going to do little segs like that as well. There you go, a little wave from Shaun. To just give it a bit more. So please do watch it. I design these things for a reason. Speaking of design, we've seen a number of throwbacks this season. It seems to be the in thing now that the helmet rule has been relaxed. Pretty much every man and his dog seems to have a alternative helmet and a throwback jersey. The latest being the The latest being the Philadelphia Eagles. They got one as late as last night in a nice little jade green number. I do apologize. It seems to be that my Asda delivery man has decided to call me about an hour ahead of schedule, which is never great. Sod's law, isn't it? The Browns launched theirs about a week or so ago. It's keeping with the 1946 throwbacks that you saw 2 years ago, I think it was, which was Baker Mayfield's last year. And in fact, actually, I think that the last time we actually wore those jerseys was one of the times, not the last time, one of the times was when Baker Mayfield ended up injuring his shoulder against the Bears. Just a bit of foreshadowing there, but it's that jersey with the drop shadow lettering. But the helmet this year is a white number with brown and orange stripes, obviously going against the usual, which is the orange helmets. Owain, I know that you are practically in love with these helmets. Tell us why, because I just don't get it.
I just think it looks really smart with the white unis. I think, to be honest, how much brown we have, the helmet as a logo really bores me. So something different is very well called for. I actually think there's 3 or 4 of these throwback jerseys that are really, really nice. I think for me, the Titans one is stunning. I know there's a little bit
the Houston Oilers one, yeah.
Yeah, the Houston connection is a little bit dodgy, but that one's a really nice one. I think the Tampa Bay one's really, really smart as well.
Yeah.
And there was another one, I can't remember the other one that I really
The
liked.
Seahawks, the 90s Seahawks one?
Yeah, it's the Seahawks, yeah. Which they'd be wearing against us.
Yeah.
Which I'm looking forward to seeing. But yeah, I just think any little bit of, difference from the normal is nice, especially when it comes to the Browns, because I think our primary stuff is less than appealing on the eye. Let's put it.
Speak for yourself. I love it. I don't get it. I love
sporting the
the
elf
brown
today
and
for the
orange
listeners.
and the classic and all the rest of it. I think it sort of stands out for. I mean, I look at the Seahawks, for example. The reason as to why I like their throwback is because it's not neon green anywhere. You don't have that terrible, weird snakeskin grey numbering of which is vile. It honestly looks like it's been designed by some 18-year-old that just got given a design brief of futuristic. But no, I mean that's just me. And also the helmet as a logo, I've come round on it because we just seem to have 17,000 logos, and every single one of them has their place, including the helmet logo. It brings it all together. Shaun, you usually try not to be in these sort of conversations because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's not football, etc. But do you have any thoughts at all on this? Because it seems to be the only thing to talk about this off-season.
Yeah, listen, I think I agree that in terms of the Browns ones, they do look really clean for what it's worth. I think it really does complement the jersey well, so I'll agree with that. I think the thing for me that I think the NFL's missing a trick with here, they tried it a few years ago, didn't they? Didn't they make Thursday nights colour rush nights or something like that in terms of the uniform? Just seems like a golden opportunity with these throwback jerseys to have something a little bit more coordinated across the league, because
throwback nights, yes.
Yeah, it just seems really random, doesn't it? Like the Browns are wearing week 2, week 7, week 10 for no particular reason, and it's like I just find it a bit bizarre where there should be just a full weekend that everybody does it once or twice a year, or every Thursday, or every primetime game, or whatever the case may be. Just sort of make it worthwhile. I think some of them look really cool. Don't get me wrong. I think the Tampa Bay one looks excellent. I've got to say, I really do like the Tampa Bay one.
Louise hates it. I can't get her one, unfortunately. She hates it. A Bucks fan that doesn't like the creamsicle. You can tell that she only went on board in the last few years.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned it yourselves. I think the Tennessee one's quite cool as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, like in the grand scheme of things, it's just more money for the NFL, isn't it? That's going to sell a few more. That's all it's really done for. Let's not confuse it with anything other than that. But yeah, it's I just think they should, like I say, coordinate it a little bit better for me. That'd be the bow that I would tie on it all, just to wrap it up.
Absolutely. Owain, which one's your favourite? And then Shaun, which one's yours? Talk amongst yourself for 30 seconds because the guy's literally at my door. This is terrible timing. I will be right back, I promise.
Oh, I don't know. Go on, Shaun. Go first.
I just said, mate, I really like that creamsicle one from
I
from the books. To be honest, I think, like you say, it's a throwback to the glory days, isn't it? And I think, ultimately that's what a throwback jersey should be for. I think that's why the Browns one works, to be honest, because it is synonymous with the glory days of the franchise, isn't it? That was where obviously all of the sort of famous Brown sides, if you like, would have been wearing the all white. And there's nothing wrong with trying to recapture that. I think the Patriots one is sneakily quite good as well, to be honest. I quite like the Patriots one. But yeah, if you were to put me on the spot and say I've got to pick one, I think it'd definitely be the creamsicle one out of all of them.
Yeah, I think I'd probably have to agree with it. I think it'd be a toss up between that and the Oilers one for me. I think the Seahawks one is smart, but it'd be those two at the front for me. I've seen quite a lot of people say the Eagles one is far and away the best one. For me, it would be fourth.
It's a little plain, isn't it?
For me, it would be
that
fourth.
Gotta be honest, I haven't seen that one. If it was renounced last night, so I can't even rank that one, to be honest.
It's honestly just a plain jade green with a bit of black outline on the white lettering, classic lettering. Yeah, for me, and yes, I am back. Look, barking mad basically means that something happens to me outside the podcast. All right, so if we can continue that throughout the season, that'd be some real coordination. But let's just call it preseason jitters. For me, it's a Seahawks one. Because first of all, the old school Seahawks on the shoulder, I really like that logo on the shoulder. The blue is just the blue and the green are just really nice 90s colorways of it. And did you see the campaign that they did for it? Like even like the very 1990s website and all the rest of it. It was brilliant. Loved it. Just loved all of it. And it's the kind of thing that I wish that we'd done instead of the very, very odd ad campaign with dude wipes of all things. I mean, money where you can get money, but dude wipes. It was a choice. It was a choice that is no doubt helping to pay that ridiculous Watson contract. But my goodness. And also, Spencer, I hear you, buddy, in the comments. Glad you're not the only one. It's just a white helmet. I guess it's not just a white helmet, and I do get the historical part of it, but I just feel like it ends up meaning that the entire thing is just white. It's now white helmet, white jerseys, and white pants. It's no. I'd have preferred an orange throwback. I'd have preferred like an orange 90s throwback, something like that.
To be honest, I've been waiting for one of them for a long time. I think loads of people hate the idea of all orange. But I think if they got the shade of orange right, similar to the shade that I'm wearing here, I think that would be my choice. Especially if they go back towards like
all orange.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be orange. Wear brown trousers.
Yeah.
Or pants, as they call it.
If they go a different way with the color rush, I don't know if they're still wearing those. Which I don't mind the color rush in any way, shape, or form, but I think
they are. It's the all brown with the orange lettering, isn't it? Yeah.
If they all switching those two around.
Yeah, they kept it because of that Baker Jets game, didn't they? Essentially, because that sort of like rebirthed the franchise. Everyone loved that, but couldn't get hold of it, so they just found a way to bastardize it in the new uniform switches up.
Imagine you could get those for a $5 now if you went looking for.
Hey, what's brilliant? What's brilliant is so I've got a Mayfield 6 road jersey that I was thinking, God, I'm not going to be able to wear this anymore. Anyway, Owusu Koromoa has changed his number to 6. I just need the nameplate. I just need a nameplate that I can stitch on. If anyone knows where I can find a proper Browns NFL stitched nameplate for Owusu Koromoa that I can just apply to my road jersey, I would be forever grateful. And this actually go on.
How far into his rookie deal is he now? Is this the last year? Because maybe not worth getting that long nameplate on the back of your jersey.
I am more than happy to do it anyway, because he's the guy who I've been rolling with since day one, since before day one. And also, otherwise, I have a Mayfield jersey that I'm not using. Sod it. Find me the nameplate. Hashtag find me the nameplate. Just very quickly, actually, on number changes. Greg Newsom's taken the number 0. I imagine that Owain's perfectly fine with this because he watches college football and therefore it's seen as fine. Whereas I find it a complete nonsense. Why on earth would you want to represent number 0? I don't get it. And Sean's nodding his head. So yeah, I knew this would be the way it would go.
So can I ask a question? You asked an interesting one there. Why would you want to represent the number 0? But what difference is number 0 from number 10?
Well, put it this way, right? Well, I mean, 10 out of 10 number at the very least it's a number, right? 0 is no one. This isn't Game of Thrones where you get to be no one, right? Being no one is a weird thing, right? Surely.
Personally, my squad number is 20. I've had that for this will be my 4th season wearing it now. Represents to me the year my daughter was born, so that's why I picked 20. So funny enough, I actually like seeing the Browns with a number 20 that I actually like as a player. Yeah. So I'm actually a little bit disappointed he's gone from 20 to 0, because now knowing my luck, number 20 will be Anthony Schwartz when he's on the
practice. Is this why you brought up number 10?
Possibly.
I feel like this is why you brought up number 10. Who wants to be repped by Anthony Schwartz? Yeah. I'm enjoying this this continuation of the No Schwartz Club. It's into its 2nd season in full force. Spencer has decided to say that it represents how many points the D will give up each week, a big fat 0. Look, Joe Woods might be gone, but that is probably still something a little too far, Spencer. I cannot put that into the atmosphere because it's going to end up being 20 instead, like the number that he went to previously. And we just don't want that.
Friend of the pod, Jack Duffin actually said
friend of the pod, shout out Spence, and also to Mark Bartel as well, who has every week been on my case saying, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? And also bring Barky Mad back, and with a bang.
So on that number 0. Just on that number 0, Jack Duffin actually said that represents the number of interceptions he's had in the league, which is maybe slightly different to Spencer's tone when it comes to optimism.
He said, I was going to say, he's just said preseason optimism. Sean, you're laughing away that your face has actually turned a beautiful shade of crimson. The Bucks primary uniform will be very glad with this current face of which you're showing there, just tittering away. Have you got anything on this, or is it just a case of not for me?
You know my view on the numbers, mate. I'm traditionalist when it comes to that. I preferred it as it was before, but be as it may, I still find it very strange seeing wide receivers lining up with numbers 0 and 2 and 1 and all sorts of nonsense, to be honest. But it is what it is, isn't it? I suppose I need to move with the times. I'm just a miserable old git, really, aren't I? So yeah, I should get used to it, mate, I suppose.
Is number 00 allowed now?
No,
let's not start that campaign.
I'm fairly sure that's allowed in college, is it not?
Yeah, double 0 is allowed in college. It's not allowed in the NFL. It was one too far for now.
For now.
The roster is only allowed to be at maximum 90. How is it not 1 to 90? No, despair. Anyway. So that was barking mad this way. I'm pretty sure that with preseason the way that it is, but we'll be touching on to far more ridiculous matters as we go along. And that will pretty much do us for this week, actually. A couple of things to make you guys aware of with the preseason the way that it is. We're now moving on into some of the other stuff that we're doing, that we have been doing, over the course of the summer. So the first thing is we've been working hard with 410 Yards on their season guide. That is available to pre-order now. I've did the Browns preview, for example. I know that I think we've had about 15 or 16 different dedicated people on it this year. It's probably the most in-depth one that we've done. So please do go over to 410yards.co.uk/guide to pick up your copy of that. Also, we actually have a watch party in week 1 this year. We've not done one before. So if you'd like to join us as we watch the opener against the Bengals, we will be at Felson's Bar in Birmingham with 410 Yards for their kickoff party. It's the first one that they've done. Really hoping to see a lot of us there to represent us. I know that a fair few Bengals fans are also going, so please do help represent the Browns. It's £10 in, but with that you get 2 pints, so you're already making money. There's pool and shuffle available and all the rest of it as well. Food and drink throughout the night. You can win a bunch of prizes as well. If we get 10 or so Browns fans, I'll also throw in a Browns prize of some sort. Hat, jersey, depends how many people turn up, but let's make it a real big party there.
A 6 Mayfield colour rush jersey if we get 10 Browns fans.
Yes, it may even be a 6 Mayfield Road jersey if my nameplate doesn't turn up. So again, so that's £10 in. Felson's Birmingham, 410yards.co.uk/kickoff for that. Otherwise, just message us at BelievelandBrit. We'll point you in the direction of stuff as well. We'll be back weekly during the preseason. We're not going to be doing stuff directly after preseason games or anything like that. Mainly because sleep is something of which we appreciate. We will, however, during the season have episodes after a game and then later on in the week, of which we'll look at the following week as well, so following week's game. So instead of everything being crammed into 1 hour, we're looking to instead spread it out a bit more, so you get reaction first. You get to have your say as well. We're going to try and do some phone-ins as well if we can, which should be quite interesting. Just got to work out the mechanics on that because Elon Musk keeps on moving the goalposts. Can't even say Twitter anymore. So we'll let you know about that. Lots of other interesting stuff. Do follow us on X or Facebook or Twitter or whatever the hell we're allowed to call it now. At Believeland Brit or the Believeland Brits podcast. And we will see you very soon. Thank you very much, Owain and Shaun, for being back with me. Looking forward to speaking to you guys all through the year. We have this now for another 5, 6. God, I've got you guys for 5 or 6 months. Nah, kidding. Couldn't imagine doing it with two. I know. Couldn't imagine doing it with 2 nicer guys, which is why I'm going on holiday in October. No, but until then, folks, thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.